I found their clothes on my grandmother's quilt. 2 days later, a $7,800 charge hit my card, and the bracelet was shining on her wrist. If you've ever been blindsided after 45, subscribe. We do receipts here, so no one fights alone. My name is Laverne Johnson, and I'm 63 years old. I've worked as a secretary at Roosevelt Middle School for 22 years, long enough that I know every kid's name by the second week, every parent's phone number by heart, and exactly which form you need before you even finish asking. People say I run that front office like a well-oiled machine, and they're right. I believe in order. I believe in showing up on time. I believe that what you say and what you do should match up perfectly, the way columns balance in a ledger. I've lived in the same brick ranch house on Oakmont Drive since 1998. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a kitchen. I remodeled myself in 2006 with honey oak cabinets and granite countertops I picked out tile by tile. The mortgage has my name on it, just mine, and I paid it off in 2019, 2 years ahead of schedule. That house isn't just 4 walls and a roof. It's every extra shift I picked up, every lunch I packed instead of ordering out, every time I said no to something I wanted so I could say yes to something I needed. My husband, Reggie, is 66. We've been married 31 years. He used to drive a delivery truck for a wholesale distributor, but he took early retirement 3 years ago to focus on his consulting business. That business, as far as I could tell, consisted of a laptop, a cell phone, and a lot of meetings at coffee shops. He talked about contracts coming through, about needing to invest in his infrastructure, about how things were going to take off any quarter now. I didn't ask too many questions. I figured a man needs to feel like he's building something, even if the blueprints are still just sketches. And then there was Marla. Marla Simmons, 62, my best friend for 18 years. We met at a church fundraiser. She was selling raffle tickets, and I was running the bake sale, and we clicked right away. She had this big laugh that made everyone around her smile, and she never met a stranger. Over the years, we did everything together. Book club, Sunday brunch, girls' trips to Myrtle Beach, birthdays, anniversaries, funerals. When her mother passed in 2017, I sat with her in the hospital all night. When my sister had her stroke in 2020, Marla brought meals to my house for 2 weeks straight. She had a key to my place. I had a key to hers. That's the kind of friendship we had, or so I thought. I'm the kind of woman who believes in loyalty. I believe you honor your word, you show up for your people, and you don't cut corners. My grandmother used to say, "Laverne, if you can't do it right, don't do it at all." So I did things right. I kept the house clean. I kept the bills paid. I kept the peace. I didn't nag. I didn't snoop. I didn't make waves. I trusted the people I loved because trust is what holds a life together. But trust, I was about to learn, is also the easiest thing to break when nobody's watching. It started small. It always does, doesn't it? Little things you brush off because you don't want to be that woman, the suspicious one, the paranoid one, the one who makes mountains out of molehills. So you tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself you're imagining things. You tell yourself that good people don't keep score. It was a Tuesday in late September, about 6 months before everything fell apart. I came home from work around 4:30, like I always do, and found Marla sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and her phone. She looked up and smiled like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Hey, Verna," she said, using the nickname she'd called me for years. "Hope you don't mind. I used my key. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd wait for you. We still on for that outlet mall trip this weekend?" "Of course," I said, setting my purse down on the counter. "You know you're always welcome. But girl, you could have texted. I would have told you I was running late." "Oh, I did text," she said, waving her hand. "You probably didn't see it. Anyway, Reggie let me in before he left for his meeting." That stopped me. Reggie was here? He was just heading out when I pulled up. Said he had a client call or something. She took a sip of her coffee, casual as Sunday morning. "He made this pot for me before he left. That man is so thoughtful." I looked at the coffee maker. It was still on, the carafe half full. Reggie never made coffee in the afternoon. He barely made it in the morning. and he certainly never mentioned that Marla was coming by. "That was nice of him," I said slowly, opening the fridge to pull out the chicken I'd planned to thaw for dinner. "I didn't know you two were on coffee-making terms." Marla laughed. "Laverne, don't be silly. He's my best friend's husband. Of course we're friendly." I let it go. Because what else was I supposed to do? Accuse my best friend of what exactly? Drinking coffee in my kitchen? Accuse my husband of what? Being polite. So I smiled and changed the subject, and we talked about the outlet mall and whether we should hit the shoe stores first or the home goods section, and the whole time there was this tiny voice in the back of my head saying, "Why didn't he tell me she was coming?" 2 weeks later, I couldn't find my spare house key. I keep all my keys on a pegboard by the back door, car keys, mailbox key, office key, everything labeled and organized. But the spare house key, the one with the blue rubber cap, was missing. I asked Reggie if he'd seen it. He shrugged and said maybe I'd misplaced it. I didn't misplace things. I'm a secretary. My entire job is knowing where things are. I called Marla on my lunch break. "Hey, you didn't borrow my spare key, did you? The blue one?" "Oh," she said, like she'd just remembered. "Yeah, I did. Remember last month when you asked me to check on the house while you were visiting your sister? You told me to take it." I had not told her to take it. I'd told her where the hidden key was, under the turtle planter on the back porch, same place it had been for 5 years. But I didn't argue. I just said, "Okay, well, I need it back when you get a chance." "Sure thing," she said brightly. "I'll drop it off this weekend." She didn't drop it off that weekend, or the next one. Every time I brought it up, she had a reason. She forgot it at home. She couldn't find it in her purse. She'd bring it next time for sure. After a while, I stopped asking. It felt petty to keep hounding her over a key. And besides, I told myself, what did it matter? She was my best friend. If she needed to get into my house for some reason, that was fine. That's what friends do. Except now, looking back, I can see the pattern. She didn't need that key for emergencies. She needed it for access, and I handed it to her on a silver platter because I trusted her. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't kick your door down. It walks in with a smile and a spare key, and you don't even notice until it's already made itself at home. By November, Reggie's consulting business still hadn't taken off, but his expenses sure had. He came to me one evening while I was folding laundry in the living room, hands in his pockets, that sheepish look on his face that I'd started seeing more and more often. "Laverne, baby," he said, sitting down on the arm of the couch. "I need to talk to you about something." I set down the towel I was folding and looked at him. "What is it?" "It's the truck note," he said. "The payment's coming up and I'm a little short this month. I've got a big contract that's supposed to close next week, but the money won't hit my account until after the due date. I just need you to cover me this one time, and I'll pay you back as soon as the check clears." The truck was a 2019 Silverado he'd bought 2 years earlier, right after he retired. He'd insisted he needed it for the business, hauling equipment, meeting clients, projecting success. The note was $600 a month. I'd never paid it before. That was his responsibility. "How much is the contract?" I asked. $4,500, he said quickly. "It's a good one, Verna, and once it comes through, I'll be able to cover my own expenses again. I just hit a rough patch, that's all." I wanted to ask him what had happened to all the other contracts he'd told me about over the past 2 years. I wanted to ask him why his business still didn't have a single piece of equipment, a single employee, a single anything except excuses. But I didn't, because I'd been raised to support my husband, to believe in him even when he didn't believe in himself. And because $4,500 sounded real. It sounded like something that could actually turn things around. "Okay," I said, "I'll cover the truck note this month. But Reggie, you've got to get this business on track. We can't keep living like this." He kissed my forehead and promised me he would. The $600 came out of my checking account on the 15th. The $4,500 contract never came. The next month, it was the truck note again. And the month after that. By February, I'd paid $3,600 in truck payments alone. But it didn't stop there. In December, Reggie told me his business insurance was due, and he didn't have the $5,750 to cover it. In January, he said his credit card was maxed out and he needed me to pay it off so he could use it for business expenses. That was $9,200. In March, he needed $3,400 for a dental procedure that insurance didn't cover. Every time he promised it was the last time. Every time I believed him. And then there was Marla. She called me in late January, her voice tight and scared. "Verna, I'm in trouble," she said. "My car broke down and the repair shop says it's going to be $8,000 to fix the transmission. I don't have it. My credit cards are all maxed out. I don't know what to do." "8,000, I repeated, my stomach sinking. "Marla, that's a lot of money." "I know," she said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. "But I need my car, Laverne. I can't get to work without it. I can't get to my mama's grave to put flowers down. I'm desperate. If you could just loan it to me, I swear I'll pay you back. I'll set up a payment plan, whatever you need. Please." I thought about all the times she'd been there for me, all the meals, all the hospital nights, all the years of friendship. I thought about what my grandmother would have said, that you help your people when they're down, because that's what family does. "Okay," I said. "I'll write you a check." The relief in her voice was so thick I could feel it through the phone. "Laverne, you are an angel. I mean it. I don't know what I'd do without you." I wrote her a check for $8,000 the next day. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, and she promised, swore on her mother's grave, that she'd start paying me back within 3 months. 3 months came and went. I didn't get a dime. By the end of March, I sat down one night with my bank statement spread out on the kitchen table, and I started adding. Truck payments, 18 months at $600 each. That was $10,800. Business insurance, $5,750. Credit card payoff, $9,200. Dental deposit, $3,400. Marla's loan, $8,000. And that wasn't even counting the smaller things. The $60 here for gas, the $120 there for groceries, the $45 for his phone bill. I stared at the total for a long time. My hands were shaking. $46,950. In 30 months, I had given away $46,950 to prop up a man who couldn't keep his promises and a woman who'd stopped returning my calls about the loan. That's when I realized I wasn't helping them. I was funding something I couldn't see yet, and I was the only one who didn't know what it was. In early April, Marla called me on a Saturday morning while I was cleaning out my closet. I almost didn't answer. I was still feeling some kind of way about the $8,000 she owed me, but old habits die hard, so I picked up. "Hey, Verna," she said, her voice all bright and bubbly. "What are you up to?" "Just cleaning," I said, pulling a sweater off a hanger. "What's going on?" "Well," she said, drawing the word out like she had big news, "I wanted to tell you before you heard it from someone else. A bunch of us are planning a little weekend trip to Asheville next month. You know, the outlet shops, the Biltmore estate, maybe some wine tasting. It's going to be so much fun." "That sounds nice," I said, already thinking about whether I could get the time off work. "Who all's going?" There was a pause. Just a heartbeat, but long enough that I noticed. "Oh, you know, me, Regina, Diane, Cynthia, and Reggie, actually." I stopped mid-reach for another hanger. "Reggie?" "Yeah," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "It's a couple's trip. Regina's husband is coming. Diane's bringing her boyfriend. We thought it would be fun to have everyone together." I waited for her to say the next part, the part where she invited me, the part where she said, "You and Reggie should come." But she didn't. The silence stretched out between us like a wire pulled too tight. "So, it's a couple's trip," I said slowly, "and Reggie's going." "Mm-hmm." "Without me." Another pause. "Laverne," she said, and her voice had changed. It was softer now, careful, the way you talk to someone you're trying not to upset. Honestly, I didn't think you'd be interested. You know how you are. You don't really like those kinds of trips. All the walking, the crowds, the wine tastings. I just figured you'd rather stay home and relax. You know how you are. Like I was some kind of shut-in. Like I was boring. Like I was too old or too tired or too something to be included in my own husband's plans. I see, I said, my voice flat. And when were you going to tell me that my husband was going out of town for a weekend? Or were you planning to tell me at all? Laverne, don't be like that, Marla said, and now she sounded irritated. It's not a big deal. We're just trying to have a good time. You're welcome to come if you want. I just didn't think you'd want to. I'll think about it, I said, even though I knew I wouldn't. Even though I knew, deep in my bones, that I wasn't actually welcome. That this invitation was a formality, something she was offering because she had to, not because she wanted me there. Okay, well, let me know, she said, her voice already moving on, already dismissing me. Talk soon. She hung up before I could say anything else. I stood there in my bedroom, surrounded by piles of clothes and empty hangers, and I felt something crack open inside me. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something colder, sharper. It was the feeling you get when you realize you've been looking at a picture wrong your whole life, and now you can finally see what's really in the frame. I went downstairs and found Reggie on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in, and I could tell from his face that he already knew what I was going to say. When were you planning to tell me about Asheville? I asked. He set his phone down on the arm of the couch. Marla told you. She did. And apparently she told you before she told me, which is interesting. Laverne. No, I said, cutting him off. I want to understand this. You're going on a couple's trip with my best friend and a bunch of other people, and you didn't think to mention it to me? You didn't think to ask if I wanted to come? I was going to tell you, he said, but he couldn't look me in the eye. Marla said you wouldn't be interested. And you believed her. She knows you better than I do sometimes, he said, which was such a slap in the face I actually felt my breath catch. She said you hate that kind of stuff. The tourist traps, the big group activities. She thought you'd rather have the house to yourself for a few days. So you let her decide for me. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Reggie? I asked. And my voice was rising now, all that cold sharpness turning to heat. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my husband and my best friend are planning trips together and telling me I'm not fun enough to come along. You're being dramatic, he said, picking his phone back up like this conversation was already over. It's just a weekend. You're acting like it's some big conspiracy. I stared at him. At this man I'd been married to for 31 years. This man whose truck I'd been paying for, whose credit cards I'd been covering, whose business I'd been funding with my own retirement savings. And he was sitting there on my couch, in my house, telling me I was dramatic for wanting to be included in his life. You're right, I said quietly. It's just a weekend. But it wasn't just a weekend. It was a message. It was them telling me, loud and clear, that I didn't belong, that I wasn't important enough to be included. That I was the third wheel in my own marriage, the outsider in my own friendship. And that's when I stopped trusting. That's when I started counting. The Asheville trip happened in mid-May. Reggie left on a Friday morning with an overnight bag and a smile, kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong, and told me he'd be back Sunday evening. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I just watched him drive away in the truck I'd been paying for, and then I went to work like it was any other day, except it wasn't any other day. Because while I was sitting at my desk filing attendance reports and answering phone calls from parents, I couldn't stop thinking about where he was and who he was with and why I wasn't invited. And the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Not the loud, explosive kind of anger, but the quiet, cold kind that sits in your chest like a stone. When I got home that evening, I did something I'd never done before. I logged into our joint bank account on my laptop and started scrolling through the transactions. I told myself I was just checking to make sure all the bills had cleared, that this was normal financial housekeeping, But that was a lie. I was looking for something. I just didn't know what yet. And then I found it. April 28th, Riverstone Hotel, Asheville. $1,100. I stared at the screen. The date was 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks before the couple's trip was even supposed to happen. And the charge was under Reggie's name on our joint credit card. The one I'd paid off in January so he could use it for business expenses. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely click on the transaction details. Riverstone Hotel, 2 nights, premium king suite. I grabbed my phone and called Marla. It rang 4 times before she picked up, and I could hear laughter and music in the background. "Hey, Vernie," she said, shouting over the noise. "What's up? We're at dinner right now." "When did you say this trip was?" I asked. "What?" "The Asheville trip. When did you say it was?" There was a pause, and then the background noise got quieter, like she'd stepped outside or into a hallway. "It's this weekend," she said. "Why?" "Because there's a charge on my credit card from the Riverstone Hotel in Asheville from 3 weeks ago," I said, "for $1,100. And it's under Reggie's name." Silence. "Marla," I said, my voice very calm, very steady. "Were you in Asheville with my husband 3 weeks ago?" "Laverne, I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice had gone high and tight, the way it always did when she was lying. "Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe someone stole his card number." "It's not a mistake," I said. "The charge cleared. It's legitimate. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Were you in Asheville with my husband 3 weeks ago?" She was stammering now, tripping over her words. "Okay, look, we did go up there. But it wasn't like, it was a business thing. Reggie had a meeting with a potential client, and I went along because I know the area, and I thought I could help. It was completely innocent, Laverne. You're reading way too much into this. A 2-night stay in a premium king suite is a business meeting?" "We got separate rooms," she said quickly. "That charge must be, I don't know, maybe it's for both rooms combined or something. But I swear to you, nothing happened. We were just helping each other out." "Then why didn't either of you tell me?" "Because we knew you'd react like this," she snapped, and now her voice had an edge to it. "We knew you'd blow it all out of proportion and make it into something it's not. That's why we didn't say anything. We were trying to protect your feelings." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It came out sharp and bitter, nothing like my normal laugh. "You were trying to protect my feelings by spending $1,100 of my money on a secret hotel trip and then lying about it? Laverne, put Reggie on the phone. He's in the bathroom right now." "Put him on the phone, Marla." I heard her sigh, and then the sound of footsteps and muffled voices. A minute later, Reggie's voice came through the line, cautious and defensive. "Laverne, before you start—" "You told me you needed that credit card for business expenses," I said. "You told me the contracts were coming through, and you just needed a little help to get on your feet. And you used it to take Marla to Asheville for a romantic weekend." "It wasn't romantic," he said, his voice rising. "Why does everything have to be some big drama with you? We went up there for a meeting. That's it." "You're being paranoid." "Then show me the meeting," I said. "Show me the client. Show me the contract." "I don't have to show you anything," he shot back. "You're not my parole officer, Laverne. I'm a grown man. I can go where I want, when I want, with whoever I want. And if you don't like it, that's your problem." I closed my eyes, took a breath, counted to 5. "You're right," I said quietly. "You are a grown man, and grown men pay their own bills. Starting now, you're on your own. I'm not covering your truck note anymore. I'm not covering your credit cards, your insurance, your nothing. You want to go on trips with Marla? You pay for them yourself. Laverne." I hung up, and then I sat there in my kitchen, alone in my quiet house, and I started making a list. Every payment I'd made, every check I'd written, every time I'd said yes when I should have said no. I pulled out bank statements, credit card bills, receipts I'd stuffed in drawers and forgotten about. I got out a yellow legal pad and a calculator, and I added it all up line by line, dollar by dollar. Truck payments, 18 months, $600 each. 10,800. Business insurance, 5,750. Credit card payoff, 9,200. Dental deposit, 3,400. Marla's loan, 8,000. Riverstone Hotel, 1,100. And that was just the big stuff. There were dozens of smaller charges, gas, groceries, dinners, business lunches that I now realized had probably been dates. By the time I was done, it was past midnight. The total sat at the bottom of the page, circled twice in red ink, $46,950. $46,950 in 30 months. I ripped the page off the pad, folded it in half, and put it in my purse. Then I went upstairs, got into my bed, in my house, that I'd paid for with my own money, and I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't break down, I planned. Because if they thought they could gaslight me, manipulate me, and then tell me I was being dramatic for noticing, they had no idea who they were dealing with. I'm a secretary. I know how to keep records. And records, I was learning, are the most powerful weapon a woman can have. Reggie came home Sunday night around 8, dragging his overnight bag behind him like nothing had happened. I was in the living room, reading a book, or pretending to anyway. Really, I was just staring at the same page over and over, waiting. He dropped the bag by the door and walked into the kitchen. I heard the fridge open, heard him rummaging around, heard the hiss of a beer can opening. Then he came back into the living room and sat down on the other end of the couch, like this was just another Sunday evening, like we were just another married couple settling in for the night. Trip was fine, he said, even though I hadn't asked. Traffic was a nightmare coming back, though. I turned a page in my book, didn't look up. Laverne, he said, and I could hear the irritation creeping into his voice. Are you really going to give me the silent treatment? I told you nothing happened. You're making this into something it's not. I closed my book, set it down on the coffee table, looked at him for the first time since he'd walked in. I'm not giving you the silent treatment, I said. I'm just deciding what to do next. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done, Reggie. I'm done covering your bills. I'm done believing your excuses. I'm done pretending that everything is fine when it's not. He took a sip of his beer, watching me over the rim of the can. So what? You're just going to punish me? Withhold money until I apologize for something I didn't even do? I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. From what? He laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was the sound a man makes when he's trying to convince you and himself that you're being ridiculous. From your husband? From your best friend? We're not the enemy here, Laverne. Then who is? He didn't have an answer for that. He just shook his head and turned on the TV, and we sat there in silence while some basketball game played out on the screen. But I wasn't watching it. I was watching him. The way he leaned back against the cushions like he owned the place. The way he finished his beer and got up to get another one without asking if I needed anything. The way he'd stopped pretending to care what I thought. That night, after he'd gone to bed, I went into the home office, the little spare bedroom I used for paperwork and storage, and I started organizing. I made file folders labeled by month and category: truck, insurance, credit cards, hotel, Marla loan, personal expenses. I printed out bank statements and highlighted every charge that supported them instead of me. I made copies of everything, one set for the files, one set in a manila envelope that I hid in the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet at work. I started checking our bank account every single day. I set up alerts on my phone so I'd get notified every time our credit card was used. I took screenshots of text messages, the ones where Reggie promised to pay me back, the ones where Marla swore she'd start making payments on the $8,000 she owed me. I saved voicemails. I logged every conversation we had about money, writing down the date, the time, and exactly what was said. People think you need to be loud to be strong. They think you need to scream and throw things and make a scene. But that's not strength. That's just noise. Real strength is quiet. Real strength is methodical. Real strength is a woman sitting at her kitchen table at midnight with a highlighter and a calculator, building a case one receipt at a time. I didn't confront Reggie again. I didn't call Marla to demand answers. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my sister, not my coworkers, not even the women at church who'd known me for years. Because I'd learned something important. The less they know, the less they can prepare. And I wanted them off balance. I wanted them to think I'd let it go, that I'd swallowed their lies and moved on. But I hadn't let anything go. I was just changing my grip. By June, I'd documented every dollar they'd taken from me. I'd documented the hotel stays. There were 3 more after Asheville, all charged to cards I'd been paying off. I'd documented the business meetings that happened on Friday afternoons when I was at work, documented through calendar invites on Reggie's phone that I'd photographed while he was in the shower. I'd documented the text messages between them, nothing explicit, but just intimate enough that any fool could read between the lines. Can't wait to see you Friday. Last weekend was amazing. Let's do it again soon. Thinking about you. I printed every single one, stapled them together, added them to the file, and then I started thinking about what came next. Because documentation is power, but documentation without action is just a pile of paper. I needed a plan. I needed a moment. I needed a stage where I could lay it all out in front of them and watch them realize, too late, what they'd done. I needed them to understand that you don't steal from a woman who knows how to balance a ledger, and I knew exactly how to make that happen. Her name was Priya Patel, and she managed the Bellwether Bistro, a upscale little restaurant downtown that Marla had been talking about for months. "We should go there for your anniversary," she'd said back in March. "It's beautiful, Verna. They do this whole private room thing with a chef's tasting menu. Very classy." At the time, I'd brushed it off. Reggie and I usually celebrated our anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, or maybe a movie and takeout. Nothing fancy, nothing that required reservations 3 months in advance. But now, sitting at my kitchen table in mid-June with my file folders and my legal pad and my rage simmering just beneath the surface, I thought about that restaurant, about how Marla had been pushing for it, about how she'd probably been planning this for a while, planning to throw some big celebration for Reggie and me while she played the generous best friend, the woman who'd saved their marriage, or some such nonsense. Well, she was going to get her celebration, just not the kind she expected. I called the Bellwether Bistro on my lunch break. A man answered, young, cheerful, probably a host. "Bellwether Bistro, how can I help you?" "I'd like to make a reservation," I said. "For July 9th. It's my wedding anniversary." "Congratulations. How many guests?" I paused, thought about it. 40. 40? He sounded surprised. "Okay, sure. We can do that. Would you like the private dining room?" "I would, and I'd like to speak with the manager about the details." "Of course. Let me transfer you to Ms. Patel." There was a click, a moment of hold music, and then a woman's voice came on the line, warm, professional, with just a hint of an accent that made her sound simultaneously kind and no-nonsense. "This is Priya Patel. I understand you'd like to book our private room?" "I would," I said. "My name is Laverne Johnson. It's for my 31st wedding anniversary, and I want to make sure everything is perfect." "Of course, Mrs. Johnson. Let me pull up the calendar. Yes, July 9th is available. Now, for 40 guests, we recommend the chef's tasting menu with wine pairings. It's $120 per person, plus service charge." I did the math in my head. 40 people at $120 each was $4,800. With service charge, call it $5,500. I could cover that. Barely, but it would be worth it. "That sounds fine," I said. "But I have a special request." "Go ahead." "I need you to be there," I said. "Personally. I need you to be in the room during the dinner, as a witness. And I need you to be prepared for things to get Uncomfortable. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Ms. Patel spoke again, her voice was careful. "Mrs. Johnson, can you tell me what you mean by uncomfortable?" I took a breath. I'm going to be confronting my husband and my best friend about some financial improprieties. I'm going to be presenting documentation. And I want someone in a position of authority there to witness it, in case things escalate or in case they try to claim later that I said or did something I didn't. Another pause. Longer this time. "I see," she said slowly. "Mrs. Johnson, I want to be clear. The Bellwether is a place of hospitality. We don't typically host confrontations." "I understand that," I said, "and I promise you, I'm not going to cause a disturbance. I'm not going to scream or throw things or make a scene. I'm simply going to read from a prepared statement and present some financial records. It will be civil, but it will be public, and I need someone there who can attest to what was said and what happened. Can I ask why you're doing it this way? Why not handle this privately?" "Because they've been gaslighting me for months," I said, and I heard the edge creep into my voice, despite my best efforts to stay calm. "They've been telling me I'm paranoid, that I'm imagining things, that I'm making mountains out of molehills. And I'm done with private conversations where they can twist my words and make me feel crazy. I want witnesses. I want accountability. I want it on the record." There was a long silence. I could hear papers rustling on her end, the faint sound of someone talking in the background. Then Ms. Patel spoke again, and her voice was different now, softer, like she understood something she hadn't before. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, "I'm going to tell you something. 5 years ago, I was in a situation not unlike yours. Someone I trusted, someone I loved, was taking advantage of me financially, and when I tried to confront them about it, they made me feel like I was the problem, like I was being unreasonable for wanting answers. It took me a long time to find the courage to stand up for myself, and when I finally did, I did it alone. I wish I'd had someone in my corner." My throat tightened. "So you'll help me?" "I'll be there," she said. "I'll make sure we have staff on hand in case things go sideways, and I'll personally witness whatever you need me to witness. But Mrs. Johnson, I need you to promise me something." "What's that?" "That you'll keep it dignified, that you won't let them drag you down to their level. You're doing this because you deserve better, and I want you to walk out of my restaurant with your head high." "I promise," I said, and I meant it. We spent the next 20 minutes going over the details. She'd arranged the room with a microphone at the head table. For toasts, she'd tell anyone who asked. She'd make sure the doors were closed but not locked, so people could leave if they wanted to, but couldn't claim they were being held against their will. A lot of women in your position would just walk away quietly. The fact that you're standing up for yourself says everything about who you are. "Thank you," I said, and my voice cracked just a little. I needed to hear that. After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then I pulled out my legal pad and added one more line item to my plan. Allie secured. It was a Tuesday evening in late June when I found the bracelet. Reggie was out, another client meeting, he'd said, and I was doing laundry. I'd learned to check his pockets before I threw his pants in the wash because he was always leaving receipts and business cards and crumpled dollar bills in there. Usually it was nothing. Gas station receipts, fast food, coffee. But this time, tucked into the pocket of his khakis, was a receipt from Ashford & Sons Fine Jewelry. My hands went still. I pulled the receipt out, unfolded it carefully like it might explode. Ashford & Sons Fine Jewelry date, June 18, 2025. Item, 14K, white gold tennis bracelet, 2.5 CT total weight. Price, $7,800 payment. Visa ending in 4492. Ship to Marla Simmons, 1847, Piedmont Ave, Suite 200. Visa ending in 4492. That was our joint credit card. The one I'd paid off in January. The one he'd promised he was only using for business expenses. $7,800 for a tennis bracelet. Shipped to Marla's office, 2 days after my birthday. My birthday had been June 16th. Reggie had given me a card, One of those generic ones from the drugstore, the kind with flowers on the front and a pre-printed message inside. No gift, no dinner, no acknowledgement that I'd just turned 63 years old and had been married to him for 31 years. When I'd mentioned it, gently, he'd said he was sorry, that money was tight, that he'd make it up to me. And then, 2 days later, he'd spent $7,800 on jewelry for my best friend. I stood there in the laundry room, holding that receipt, and something inside me went very cold and very calm. This was it. This was the proof I needed, not just of the affair, but of the calculated cruelty of it. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice to spend money we didn't have on a woman who wasn't his wife, while telling me we couldn't afford to celebrate my birthday. I took a picture of the receipt with my phone. Then I folded it back up, put it in a plastic sandwich bag, and added it to my file. But I wasn't done. The next day, on my lunch break, I drove to Ashford & Sons. It was a small store in a strip mall on the north side of town, the kind of place that's been there forever, with dusty display cases and an older gentleman behind the counter who looked like he'd been selling jewelry since the Ford administration. "Can I help you?" he asked when I walked in. "I hope so," I said, pulling out my phone and showing him the picture of the receipt. "My husband purchased a bracelet here 2 weeks ago, and I need some information about the transaction." The man squinted at the screen, then typed something into his computer. "Ah, yes, the tennis bracelet, beautiful piece. Is there a problem with it?" "Not exactly," I said, "but I need to confirm a few details. This was charged to a credit card ending in 4492, correct?" "That's correct." "And it was shipped to an address on Piedmont Avenue?" He glanced at his screen again. "Yes, ma'am. Suite 200. We shipped it out the same day." "Can you tell me if the person who purchased it picked the bracelet out in person, or if it was ordered online?" "In person," he said. "I remember the transaction." The gentleman came in with a lady, blonde hair, early 60s, very friendly. They looked at several pieces, and she fell in love with the tennis bracelet. He paid, we shipped it, and that was that. So they'd come in together. Reggie and Marla, shopping for jewelry like a couple. Like I didn't exist. "I see," I said. "One more question. Is it possible to return the bracelet for a credit?" The man frowned. "Well, that depends. Our return policy is 30 days from the date of purchase, and the item has to be in its original condition, unworn, with all the tags and packaging. Do you have it?" "Not yet," I said, "but I will." He looked confused, but he didn't ask any more questions. He just printed out a copy of the receipt. "For your records," he said. And I thanked him and walked out. That evening, while Reggie was in the shower, I went through Marla's Facebook page on my laptop. I scrolled back to mid-June, looking for any photos she might have posted. And there it was. June 21st, 4 days after the bracelet was delivered. A selfie of Marla at some restaurant, smiling at the camera with a glass of wine in her hand. And on her wrist, glinting in the low light, was a tennis bracelet. The caption read, "Treating myself. Sometimes you have to celebrate the little victories." I took a screenshot, added it to the file. Then I opened a new document and started drafting a letter. To whom it may concern. On June 18, 2025, a purchase was made at Ashford & Sons Fine Jewelry using a joint credit card in my name. The purchase, a $7,800 tennis bracelet, was made without my knowledge or consent and was shipped to a third party. I am formally requesting that this charge be reversed and that the item be returned to the store for a full refund. Attached you will find 1. A copy of the original receipt. 2. Bank statements showing the charge on the joint account. 3. Photographic evidence of the third party wearing the item in question. 4. A notarized statement attesting to the facts above. I request that this matter be resolved within 15 business days. If the charge is not reversed, I will be forced to pursue further legal action. Sincerely, Laverne A. Johnson. I printed 2 copies, one for the credit card company, one for my file. Then I made an appointment at the bank for the following week to have the letter notarized. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about making them understand that every single thing they'd done had a paper trail. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal. I had receipts for all of it, and I was going to use them. The bank appointment was on Thursday morning, before my shift at the school. I met with a notary, a pleasant woman named Denise, who'd worked at the branch for years and knew me by name. "What do we have today, Laverne?" she asked, pulling out her stamp and logbook. "Just a letter that needs to be notarized," I said, sliding the document across the desk. "For a credit card dispute." She glanced at it, nodded, and watched as I signed at the bottom. Then she stamped it, signed her own name, and recorded it in her book. "There you go," she said, handing it back. "I hope you get it resolved." "Oh, I will," I said. Before I left, I stopped at one of the customer service desks and asked to speak with someone about my accounts. A young man named Trevor came over, 20-something, eager, probably fresh out of business school. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Johnson?" "I need to make some changes to my joint checking account," I said. "Specifically, I need to remove my husband as an authorized user on any credit cards linked to that account." Trevor blinked. "Oh, okay. Can I ask why?" "There have been some unauthorized charges," I said, "and I need to protect my credit." "I understand. Let me pull up your account." He typed for a moment, frowning at his screen. "Okay, so you have 2 credit cards linked to this account, one Visa and one MasterCard. Your husband is listed as an authorized user on both. If I remove him, he won't be able to use the cards anymore." "That's exactly what I want." "All right. I'll need you to fill out this form, and then I can process it right away. The changes will take effect within 24 hours. I filled out the form, signed it, and handed it back. "One more thing," I said. "I also need to freeze the home equity line of credit attached to this account." Trevor's eyebrows went up. "Freeze it? As in, prevent any further draws?" "Exactly." "Mrs. Johnson, that's a pretty big step. Are you sure? If you freeze the HELOC, neither you nor your husband will be able to access those funds until you formally unfreeze it." "I'm sure," I said. "How long does it take?" "I can submit the request today, but it'll take about a week to process. We have to send written notice to all account holders before a freeze goes into effect." "That's fine. Submit it." He hesitated, clearly wanting to ask more questions, but smart enough to know it wasn't his business. "Okay," he said. "I'll get this started. Anything else?" "That's it. Thank you, Trevor." I walked out of that bank feeling lighter than I had in months. It was like I'd been carrying a 100-pound weight on my shoulders and had finally set it down. Reggie and Marla could lie to me. They could gaslight me. They could tell me I was paranoid and dramatic and making things up. But they couldn't charge another dime to my credit cards. They couldn't pull money out of my home equity. They couldn't touch my finances anymore. That afternoon, I went to the county courthouse and filed for a legal separation. I didn't want a divorce. Not yet, anyway. I just wanted a formal, court-recognized boundary between me and Reggie. The clerk at the window, an older black woman with kind eyes and no-nonsense manner, took my paperwork and looked it over. "You sure about this, honey?" she asked quietly. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said. She nodded, stamped the papers, and handed me a copy. "Good for you," she said. "Too many women stay too long." From there, I went to see a lawyer. His name was Harold Graves, and he'd been recommended by a woman at church whose daughter had gone through a messy divorce a few years back. Mr. Graves was in his 70s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of calm confidence that comes from having seen everything twice. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, shaking my hand and gesturing to a chair in his office. "What can I do for you?" I opened my bag and pulled out the file, the thick, organized, meticulously labeled file I'd been building for 2 months. I set it on his desk. "I need you to help me protect my assets," I said, "and I need you to be present at an event on July 9th. He opened the file and started reading. His expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten just slightly. After a few minutes, he looked up. "Mrs. Johnson, this is very thorough." "I'm a secretary," I said. "I know how to keep records." "I can see that." He flipped through a few more pages. "And you're planning to present all of this publicly? At a restaurant?" "I am, in front of 40 witnesses." "Why?" "Because I want them to know that I know," I said. "I want them to understand that I'm not the naive little wife they think I am. And I want everyone we know, our friends, our family, our community, to see exactly what they've been doing behind my back." Mr. Graves leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You know this is going to be painful, not just for them, but for you." "I know." "And you're prepared for that?" "Mr. Graves," I said, "I've been in pain for 30 months. I've been humiliated, manipulated, and gaslit. I've had my money stolen, my trust broken, and my dignity trampled. This is me taking it back, all of it. So yes, I'm prepared." He nodded slowly. "All right then, I'll be there. And Mrs. Johnson?" "Yes? Don't let them rattle you. You've got the facts on your side. Stick to the facts, stay calm, and let the truth do the work." "I will," I said. I left his office with a plan, a lawyer, and a court order. The pieces were falling into place. All I had to do now was wait for July 9th. Marla called me 3 days later on Sunday afternoon, while I was folding laundry in the living room. I almost didn't answer. I was still furious about the bracelet, still nauseated every time I thought about the two of them shopping for jewelry together. But I needed to keep up appearances. I needed her to think everything was fine. "Hey, Vern," she said when I picked up, her voice all sunshine and smiles. "I've been meaning to call you. I have a surprise." "Oh?" I said, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder so I could keep folding. "What's that?" "I'm throwing you an anniversary party," she said. "For you and Reggie. 31 years is a big deal, and I thought it would be nice to celebrate with all your friends and family. I already booked the Bellwether Bistro for July 9th. Remember that place I was telling you about? The one with the private dining room?" My hands went still on the towel I was folding. She had no idea. No idea that I'd already booked the room. No idea that I'd spoken to Ms. Patel. No idea that this entire surprise was about to become her worst nightmare. "Marla," I said slowly, trying to sound touched instead of enraged. That's so thoughtful of you." "I know," she said, practically bouncing through the phone. "I've been planning it for weeks. I'm inviting about 40 people. Your sister, some of the ladies from church, people from Reggie's old job, some of our book club friends. It's going to be beautiful, Vern. A real celebration." 40 people, I repeated. And I'm covering the cost, so don't even worry about it. This is my gift to you. You and Reggie have been through so much, and I just want you to know how much I love you both." The audacity. The absolute audacity of this woman to steal my money, sleep with my husband, and then throw me a party with my own friends and call it a gift. I wanted to reach through the phone and shake her. But I didn't. I kept my voice steady, kept my tone warm, kept the mask firmly in place. "That's so generous, Marla. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she said. "Just show up and let me spoil you. Oh, and wear something nice. I want you to feel special." "I will," I said. "Thank you." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. 40 people. She was inviting 40 people to watch me confront her and Reggie. She was building the audience herself. It was almost funny, in a dark, twisted way. I called Ms. Patel back that afternoon. "Ms. Patel, it's Laverne Johnson. I wanted to give you an update." "Mrs. Johnson, hello. What's going on?" "My friend Marla called me today. She thinks she's planning the party. She's inviting 40 people, just like I said she would." "And she has no idea?" "None. She thinks this is her gift to me." Ms. Patel was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mrs. Johnson, I've been in the restaurant business for 15 years. And I've seen a lot of things, but I have never seen anything like this. You're a woman of extraordinary patience." "Patience has nothing to do with it," I said. "I'm just making sure I get it right." Over the next 2 weeks, I finalized everything. I wrote out my statement, 3 pages, single-spaced, typed and printed on clean white paper. I rehearsed it in my car on the way to work, in the shower, in bed at night when I couldn't sleep. I wanted to make sure I didn't stumble, didn't cry, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I made copies of every receipt, every bank statement, every screenshot. I put them in a binder with dividers and labels, organized chronologically. I made a second binder for Mr. Graves and a third one that I planned to leave with Ms. Patel. I bought a new dress, navy blue, simple, elegant. The kind of dress you wear when you want to be taken seriously. I got my hair done, my nails. I wanted to walk into that room looking like a woman who had her life together, not a woman who was falling apart. And most importantly, I practiced staying calm. I practiced breathing. I practiced keeping my voice steady even when every instinct in my body was screaming at me to yell, to throw things, to make them hurt the way they'd hurt me. Because I knew deep down that anger wouldn't serve me here. Anger would make me look unstable, emotional, easy to dismiss. What I needed was ice. I needed to be colder than they'd ever seen me. I needed to be the woman they'd underestimated, standing in front of them with proof they couldn't deny. On the morning of July 8th, the day before the party, I went to the house while Reggie was out. I packed a bag with clothes, toiletries, my important documents. I took my grandmother's quilt off the bed, the one I'd found their clothes on that day back in April, and folded it carefully, put it in the bag. I wasn't planning to come back here, not after tomorrow. This house might have my name on the deed, but it didn't feel like home anymore. I drove to a hotel across town and checked in for 2 nights. I didn't tell Reggie where I was. I didn't tell Marla. I didn't tell anyone. I just disappeared. And the next morning, I woke up, put on my navy blue dress, and got ready to take back my life. The Bellwether Bistro was even more beautiful than I'd imagined. The private dining room had floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a small courtyard garden, white tablecloths, fresh flowers on every table. Miss Patel had arranged everything perfectly. The head table at the front of the room with a microphone set up for toasts, round tables for the guests, soft lighting that made everything feel warm and intimate. I arrived at 5:30, half an hour before the party was supposed to start. Ms. Patel met me at the door, looking elegant in a black pantsuit. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, shaking my hand. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. "Mr. Graves is already here. He's at the back table near the exit, and I've got 2 staff members stationed right outside if you need anything." "Thank you," I said, "for all of this." "You're going to do great," she said. "Just remember, facts, calm, dignity." I nodded and walked into the room. Mr. Graves caught my eye from the back and gave me a small, encouraging nod. I set my binder down on the head table, checked the microphone, and then I waited. People started arriving at 6. My sister, Patricia, with her husband. A few women from church, some of Reggie's old co-workers, book club friends. They hugged me, congratulated me, told me how lovely I looked. I smiled and thanked them and made small talk, all the while my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Marla arrived at 6:15, wearing a cream-colored dress and that damn tennis bracelet. She swept into the room like she owned it, hugging people, laughing, playing the perfect hostess. When she saw me, she rushed over and wrapped me in a hug. "Happy anniversary, Vern," she said. "You look gorgeous." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. I did look gorgeous. I looked like a woman who was about to burn their entire world down. Reggie came in a few minutes later, dressed in a suit I didn't recognize, probably bought with money he didn't have. He kissed me on the cheek, told me I looked nice, and then went to get a drink from the bar Ms. Patel had set up in the corner. By 6:30, everyone was there, 40 people, just like Marla had said, 40 witnesses. Miss Patel dimmed the lights just slightly and nodded at me. It was time. I walked to the head table, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I picked up the microphone, and the room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at me, smiling, expectant. "Thank you all for coming," I said, and my voice came out strong and clear, no tremor, no hesitation. "I know Marla told you this was an anniversary party, and in a way, I suppose it is. 31 years is a long time to be married, long enough to build a life, long enough to think you know someone, long enough to trust them with everything you have." I paused, looked around the room, made eye contact with my sister, with the women from church, with Reggie. He was starting to look uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "But tonight isn't about celebrating," I said. "Tonight is about truth and accountability, and making sure that everyone in this room knows exactly what's been happening behind my back for the past 30 months. The room went very still. I saw Marla's face go pale, saw Reggie set down his drink. "Over the past 2.5 years," I continued, opening my binder, "I have paid $46,950 to support my husband and my best friend. I paid Reggie's truck note for 18 months. That's $600 a month for a total of $10,800. I paid his business insurance, $5,750. I paid off his credit card, $9,200. I covered a dental procedure, $3,400. I loaned Marla $8,000 for car repairs that I now believe never happened." I could hear people shifting in their seats. Someone gasped. "And that's just the big expenses," I said. "There were hotel stays, including an $1,100 trip to Asheville in April that I didn't know about until I checked our credit card statement. There was a cabinets deposit, $6,400, for renovations that never got done. There was a cruise deposit, $2,300, that we lost because Reggie canceled at the last minute, supposedly because of work." I flipped to the next page in my binder. "And then, on June 18th, 2 days after my birthday, which my husband forgot, there was a $7,800 charge at Ashford & Sons Fine Jewelry for a tennis bracelet. That was shipped to Marla's office." Marla's hand flew to her wrist, instinctively covering the bracelet, but it was too late. Everyone had already seen it. "Marla," I said, looking directly at her, "would you like to explain to everyone here how you got that bracelet?" She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Reggie like he could save her, but Reggie was staring at the floor, his face red. I bought it myself," she stammered. "I saved up." "You bought it yourself," I repeated. "With what money, Marla? The $8,000 you borrowed from me and never paid back? Or maybe with the money Reggie's been giving you from the credit cards I've been paying off?" Silence. I turned to face the whole room again. "I have documentation for every dollar I've mentioned," I said. "Bank statements, credit card bills, receipts, hotel invoices, text messages, calendar entries. I've had it notarized, and I've given copies to my attorney, who's here tonight as a witness. And I've filed for legal separation, which means that as of today, Reggie no longer has access to any of my accounts, my home equity line, or my credit cards." Someone in the back started clapping. Slowly at first, then louder. Then someone else joined in. And then someone else. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. Reggie finally looked up. "Laverne," he said, his voice shaking. You can't just—" "I can," I said. And I did. "You and Marla have been stealing from me, lying to me, and making me feel crazy for noticing. But I'm not crazy. I'm just a woman who knows how to balance a ledger, and your numbers don't add up." I closed the binder. "So, here's what's going to happen," I said. "Reggie, you have 48 hours to remove your belongings from my house. After that, I'm changing the locks and filing a trespass notice. Marla, you have until the end of the month to return that bracelet to Ashford & Sons, or I'm pressing charges for theft. And both of you can consider this your notice that I will be pursuing repayment of every dollar you've taken from me, either through small claims court or through wage garnishment, whichever gets me my money back faster." I set the microphone down on the table. The room was absolutely silent. Then Patricia stood up, walked over to me, put her arm around my shoulders. "That's my sister," she said proudly. And one by one, the other women in the room started standing too. The book club ladies, the church friends, even a couple of Reggie's old co-workers. They formed a line, waiting to hug me, to tell me I did the right thing, to offer their support. Reggie and Marla just stood there, frozen, humiliated, exposed, and I walked out of that room with my head high. The aftermath happened fast. Ms. Patel escorted Reggie and Marla out of the restaurant while the guests were still crowding around me, offering congratulations and support. I didn't see them leave. I was too busy accepting hugs from women who told me I was brave, who told me they wished they'd had the courage to do what I'd done, who slipped me their phone numbers and said to call if I needed anything. Mr. Graves materialized at my elbow about 20 minutes later, holding his briefcase. "Mrs. Johnson," he said quietly, "I have the separation papers here. The sheriff's deputy is waiting outside to serve them to your husband. Are you ready for that?" I nodded. "Do it." He stepped outside, and through the window, I saw him hand the papers to a uniformed officer. 2 minutes later, I saw Reggie's face go white as the deputy handed him the envelope and said something official sounding. Marla was standing next to him, crying, her mascara running down her cheeks. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, no regret. Just a cold, calm emptiness. "It's done," Mr. Graves said when he came back inside. "He's been formally notified, and I've already sent the paperwork to the bank to have him removed as an authorized user on your cards. That should be finalized by tomorrow morning." "And the home equity line?" "Frozen as of yesterday. He can't touch it." "Good," I said. Patricia drove me back to the hotel that night. She didn't say much, just held my hand and let me sit in the quiet. When we got to my room, she helped me out of my dress and into pajamas like I was a child, and then she sat on the edge of the bed. "You okay?" she asked. "I will be," I said, "eventually." "That took guts, Vernie. What you did tonight, most people couldn't do that. Most people don't get $46,000 stolen from them by their husband and best friend." She shook her head. "It's not just the money, it's the principle. You didn't let them make you small. You didn't let them convince you that you were crazy or paranoid or imagining things. You trusted yourself. That's the part that matters." I leaned my head on her shoulder. "I'm tired, Pat. I know you are. But you did it. You stood up. You spoke your truth. Now you get to rest." She stayed with me that night, sleeping in the other bed, and I was grateful not to be alone. The next morning, my phone exploded. Text messages from friends, from people at church, from women I barely knew who'd heard about what happened and wanted to reach out. Some of them shared their own stories. Husbands who'd cheated, friends who'd betrayed them, money that had been stolen. It was like I'd opened a door and suddenly all these women felt safe enough to walk through it. One message, though, stood out. It was from Ms. Patel. "Mrs. Johnson, I wanted you to know that after you left last night, several of your guests approached me to cover the bill for the party. They insisted. The total has been paid in full, and there's no charge to you. You gave a lot of women hope last night. Thank you for letting me be a part of it. Priya." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I cried. Not sad tears, but relieved ones. The kind that come when you realize you're not as alone as you thought you were. Later that day, I went back to the house, my house, with Patricia and Mr. Graves. Reggie's truck was in the driveway, but he wasn't there. Smart man. Mr. Graves had arranged for a locksmith to meet us, and within an hour, every lock on every door had been changed. New keys, new deadbolts, new everything. I walked through the room slowly, taking inventory. Reggie had already started packing. There were boxes in the bedroom, clothes piled on the bed. Good. That meant he was taking me seriously. In the kitchen, I found a note on the counter. "Laverne, please call me. We need to talk about this. You're overreacting. I can explain everything. R. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. There was nothing left to explain. Mr. Graves drew up a trespass notice while we were there, and the property manager from my homeowners association came by to witness and sign it. Effective immediately, Reggie was not allowed on the property without my written permission. If he showed up, I could call the police and have him arrested. What about his belongings? I asked Mr. Graves. Legally, you have to give him reasonable access to collect them, he said. But you can set the terms. I'd suggest giving him a specific window, say this Saturday between 10 and noon, and having a witness present. After that, anything he leaves behind is considered abandoned property, and you can dispose of it however you see fit. That works, I said. I sent Reggie a text message that afternoon. You have until this Saturday, July 12th, between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. to collect your belongings from the house. My attorney will be present. After that, anything left behind will be donated or discarded. Do not contact me again except to confirm this appointment. He responded within minutes. Laverne, please, this is insane. I love you. We can work this out. Don't throw away 31 years over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. He was calling $46,000 in theft a misunderstanding. I didn't respond. I just blocked his number. Marla tried calling me 17 times that week. 17. She left voicemails, some of them crying, some of them angry, all of them desperate. Verna, please pick up. We need to talk. You don't understand. It's not what it looked like. Please, I'm begging you. You're my best friend. Don't do this. Laverne, I know you're upset, but you embarrassed me in front of everyone we know. You humiliated me. I thought we were friends. How could you do that to me? Fine, don't answer, but you should know that everyone thinks you're crazy. They're all talking about how you made this huge scene over nothing. You made yourself look paranoid and bitter, Laverne. I hope you're happy. I saved every voicemail, added them to the file. Then I blocked her number too. On Thursday, I went back to Ashford & Sons with the tennis bracelet. I'd gotten it from Marla's office. She'd left it in her desk drawer, probably in a panic after the party. Her assistant, a young woman named Keisha, who'd always been friendly to me, had handed it over without asking questions. I think she knew. The same older gentleman was behind the counter at the jewelry store. Can I help you? I set the box on the counter. I'm returning this. I believe you have a 30-day return policy? He opened the box, examined the bracelet. It appears to be in perfect condition. And yes, we're still within the 30-day window. May I ask? It was purchased on my credit card without my authorization, I said. I'd like a full refund, credited back to the original payment method. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Of course. Let me process that for you. It took about 10 minutes. When he handed me the receipt showing the $7,800 credit, I felt something in my chest loosen just slightly. I'm sorry for whatever you're going through, he said quietly. Thank you, I said, but I'm going to be just fine. Saturday came. Reggie showed up at 10 o'clock sharp with his brother Marcus and a U-Haul truck. Mr. Graves and Patricia were there with me, standing in the living room like sentries. Reggie looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His eyes were red-rimmed. His hands shook as he carried boxes out to the truck. He tried to talk to me once. Laverne, please, can we just talk for 5 minutes? But Mr. Graves stepped between us. Mr. Johnson, the terms are clear. You're here to collect your belongings, nothing more. If you try to engage Mrs. Johnson in conversation, I'll have no choice but to call the police and have you removed. Reggie looked at me over Mr. Graves's shoulder, his eyes pleading. But I just looked away. By noon, the truck was loaded. Reggie stood in the driveway, staring at the house. His home for 27 years, like he couldn't believe this was really happening. You're making a mistake, he said. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret, I said, is not doing it sooner. He got in the truck and drove away. Marcus gave me an apologetic look before he followed in his own car. And just like that, he was gone. The legal aftermath took 3 months, but Mr. Graves handled most of it, so I didn't have to. In August, I filed a claim in small claims court for the full $46,950, itemized down to the penny. Reggie tried to fight it at first, claimed I'd given him the money willingly, that there was no theft, that I was just a bitter ex-wife trying to punish him for moving on. But I had receipts, literally. Bank statements, credit card bills, text messages where he promised to pay me back, voicemails where he begged for just 1 more month. The judge took one look at my binder, the same one I'd presented at the bellwether, and ruled in my favor. Reggie was ordered to pay me back in monthly installments of $750 for the next 63 months. If he missed a payment, his wages would be garnished automatically. Marla was harder to pin down, since the $8,000 loan had been given as a personal check with no formal agreement. But Mr. Graves found a clause in North Carolina law that allowed for verbal contracts to be enforced if there was sufficient evidence of the agreement. The voicemails where Marla promised to pay me back were enough. The judge ordered her to repay $8,000 plus interest at $500 a month for 16 months. Neither of them was happy about it. Reggie sent me a few emails calling me vindictive and cruel. Marla posted on Facebook about toxic people who can't forgive mistakes. I didn't engage. I just forwarded the emails to Mr. Graves and took screenshots of the posts in case I needed them later. By September, I'd gotten the first round of payments from both of them, $750 from Reggie, $500 from Marla. It wasn't much, wouldn't even cover 1 month of what I'd been paying for them, but it was a start. More importantly, it was acknowledgement. It was them admitting, in writing and in money, that they'd taken something that wasn't theirs. The story spread, of course. Small towns are like that. By the end of July, everyone knew what had happened at the bellwether. Some people called me brave, some called me petty. Some said I should have handled it privately, that I'd embarrassed myself as much as I'd embarrassed them. I didn't care what they said, because the women, the ones who mattered, the ones who'd been through it themselves, they understood. They reached out. They told me their stories. They asked for Mr. Graves's contact information. A few of them even started calling me for advice when they suspected their own husbands or friends of doing something similar. I became, without meaning to, a cautionary tale and an inspiration all at once. At work, my coworkers treated me differently. Not badly exactly, just carefully. Like I was fragile, like I might break if someone said the wrong thing. But Ms. Deirdre, the school principal who'd worked with me for 15 years, pulled me aside one day in early September. "Laverne," she said, "I just want you to know, what you did took courage, and it's made a difference. One of our teachers came to me last week about financial abuse from her boyfriend, and she said it was because of you. She said if you could stand up for yourself, she could too." I felt my throat tighten. "I didn't do it for anyone else," I said. "I did it for me." "I know," Ms. Deirdre said. "But sometimes the things we do for ourselves end up helping other people too. That's the power of speaking your truth." In October, I got a letter from Ms. Patel. She'd been thinking about that night, she wrote, and about how many women probably needed a safe space to have difficult conversations like the one I'd had. She was considering starting a support group at the bellwether, a monthly gathering for women dealing with financial abuse, infidelity, betrayal. Would I be interested in being part of it? I wrote back and said yes. The first meeting was in November. 12 women showed up. We sat around a table in that same private dining room where I'd confronted Reggie and Marla, and we told our stories. Some of them cried. Some of them raged. Some of them just sat quietly, listening, finally feeling seen. At the end of the night, a woman named Jasmine, 32, with 2 kids and a husband who'd been stealing from her for years, came up to me. "Thank you," she said. "I didn't think I could do this. I didn't think I was strong enough. But watching you stand up there that night and just tell the truth, it made me realize I could do it too." "You are strong enough," I said. "You always were. You just needed to see it." She hugged me tight, and I realized something. This was the justice I'd been looking for. Not revenge, not punishment, just the simple, powerful act of refusing to be silent, of saying, "This happened to me, and it was wrong, and I deserve better." By December, I'd received $4,500 from Reggie and $3,000 from Marla. It was a fraction of what they owed me, but it was progress. More importantly, I'd taken back control of my life. My house was mine again, truly mine, with new locks and new rules. My finances were mine, with no one else's name on the accounts. My time was mine, with no one to answer to but myself. I was 63 years old, and I was starting over. And it was terrifying and liberating and exhausting and empowering all at once. Christmas came, and for the first time in 31 years, I didn't spend it with Reggie. Patricia invited me to her house, and I went, bringing pound cake and sweet potato pie like I always did. Her kids were there, my niece and nephew, both in their 30s now, with families of their own. They hugged me extra tight that year, and I knew Patricia had told them what happened. Aunt Verne, my nephew Marcus said, named after Reggie's brother, ironically. "I just want you to know we're proud of you. What you did, that took guts." "Thank you, baby," I said, patting his cheek. We didn't talk about Reggie. We didn't talk about Marla. We just ate and laughed and played games with the grandkids, and it was the best Christmas I'd had in years. Because it was honest. Because I didn't have to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. Because I was surrounded by people who loved me for who I was, not for what I could give them. In January, I got a phone call from a producer at a local radio station. She'd heard about what happened. Of course she had. Everyone had. And she wanted to interview me for a segment on financial abuse and empowerment. At first I said no. I didn't want to be some kind of poster child or cautionary tale. I just wanted to move on with my life. But then I thought about Jasmine, about the women at Ms. Patel's support group, about the dozens of messages I'd gotten from strangers who said my story had helped them see their own situations more clearly. So, I said yes. The interview aired in February. I talked about the warning signs I'd missed, the gaslighting, the slow erosion of trust. I talked about how I'd documented everything, how I'd built my case quietly and carefully before confronting them publicly. And I talked about how it felt to finally stand up and say, "No more." The response was overwhelming. The station got so many calls and emails that they asked me to come back for a follow-up segment. Then a local newspaper wanted to do a story, then a regional magazine. By March, I'd been featured in 3 different publications, and I'd gotten interview requests from national outlets. Mr. Graves helped me navigate it all, advising me on what to say and what to keep private, how to protect myself while still telling my story. I didn't do it for fame. I did it because I realized that my silence had protected Reggie and Marla for too long. And if speaking up meant that even one woman recognized the signs of financial abuse in her own life and got out before it got as bad as mine did, then it was worth it. In April, on what would have been my 32nd wedding anniversary, I took myself out to dinner. Not to the Bellwether, that place would always be tied to that night, and I needed something new. I went to a little Italian restaurant I'd always wanted to try, and I ordered a glass of wine and the most expensive entree on the menu, and I sat there by myself and didn't feel lonely. I felt free. The payments kept coming, $750 from Reggie every month, like clockwork, because he knew if he missed one, his paycheck would be garnished and his employer would know why. $500 from Marla, though hers were less reliable, sometimes late, sometimes with angry notes attached about how I was bleeding her dry. I didn't respond to the notes. I just deposited the checks and added them to my ledger. By my calculations, at the current rate, I'd be fully repaid in about 4 years. I'd be 67, still young enough to enjoy the money, still young enough to build something new. I heard through the grapevine that Reggie and Marla weren't together anymore. Apparently, the affair had been exciting when it was a secret, but once it was exposed, once they actually had to face the consequences and the judgment and the reality of what they'd done, the spark fizzled out. Reggie was living with his brother. Marla had moved to another town, trying to escape the whispers and the stares. I felt nothing when I heard that. No satisfaction, no vindication, no sadness. Just a mild curiosity, the way you might feel about a news story that doesn't really affect your life. They'd taken 30 months of my life, $46,950 of my money, and years of my trust. But they hadn't taken my dignity. They hadn't taken my voice. And they sure as hell hadn't taken my future. Because I was still here, still standing, still moving forward. And that, I realized, was the real victory. By the time summer rolled around again, a full year after the confrontation at the Bellwether, I'd settled into a rhythm that felt like mine. I'd redecorated the house, room by room, erasing the last traces of Reggie's presence. The bedroom got new paint, a soft sage green instead of the beige he'd insisted on. I replaced the furniture in the living room, donated his recliner to Goodwill, bought myself a reading chair that fit perfectly by the window. The garden I'd always wanted? I planted it in May. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs, flowers. I spent my Saturday mornings out there with my hands in the dirt, and it felt like therapy. Ms. Patel's support group had grown to 25 women. We met the first Thursday of every month, and I'd become something of a facilitator, helping new women document their situations, connecting them with lawyers, teaching them the importance of keeping records. Mr. Inhart Graves had even started offering discounted consultations for women from the group. One evening in late June, a woman named Darlene, 58, married 34 years, stood up during the meeting and said she'd filed for divorce that morning. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, looking at me, "without seeing that it was possible, that I could survive, that I deserved better." The whole room applauded. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. These weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pride, of purpose. "You did this yourself," I told her. "I just showed you it was possible. You're the one who had the courage to take the step." After the meeting, Ms. Patel pulled me aside. "Laverne, I've been thinking," she said. "What you're doing here, it's bigger than a monthly support group. Have you ever thought about writing a book or creating some kind of program to help women in these situations?" I laughed. "Me? Write a book? I'm a school secretary, Priya. I file papers and answer phones." "You're a woman who took down 2 people who thought they were untouchable," she said. "You're a woman who helped dozens of others do the same. Don't sell yourself short." I thought about it all the way home. A book, a program, something that could reach beyond this one town, beyond this one group of women. Something that could help people I'd never meet. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made a decision. I'd start small, maybe a blog or a series of YouTube videos. Just me, talking about the warning signs, the documentation process, the legal steps. Nothing fancy, just honest. I started filming the first video that weekend. I set up my laptop in the living room, made sure the lighting was decent, and I hit record. "My name is Laverne Johnson," I said to the camera. "I'm 64 years old, and a year ago, I confronted my husband and my best friend about stealing $46,000 from me over the course of 30 months. This is my story, and this is what I learned." I posted it on YouTube with the title, "How I Documented Financial Abuse and Got My Life Back." I didn't expect much, maybe a few dozen views from people in town, maybe some supportive comments from women I knew. Within a week, it had 10,000 views. Within 2 weeks, 50,000. People were commenting, sharing their own stories, asking questions, thanking me for speaking up. I made more videos, one on how to document expenses, one on setting boundaries with financial abusers, one on finding a good lawyer, one on staying calm during confrontation. By August, my channel had 100,000 subscribers. By October, 250,000. A literary agent reached out in November. Would I be interested in writing a book, a memoir and guide combined, telling my story while offering practical advice to women in similar situations? I met with her in December. We talked for 3 hours, and by the end of it, I'd signed a contract. The book would be called Receipts, how I took back my life $1 at a time. It would come out the following year, and the advance was enough that I could retire from my job at the school if I wanted to. But I didn't want to. Not yet. Because those kids at Roosevelt Middle School, they needed someone at that front desk who knew their names, who cared about their lives, who could look at a scared sixth grader and say, "It's going to be okay, I promise." So I kept working, kept going to the support group, kept making videos, kept collecting my $750 from Reggie and my $500 from Marla every month, marking them off in my ledger with quiet satisfaction. I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't angry. I'd moved past that into something clearer and calmer. I was a woman who'd been betrayed, who'd been stolen from, who'd been gaslighted and manipulated and told she was crazy. And I was a woman who'd fought back, not with violence, not with screaming, but with documentation and dignity and an absolute refusal to be silent. I was Laverne Johnson. I was 64 years old, and I'd taken back my life, one receipt at a time. And now I was helping other women do the same. 2 years later, on a warm afternoon in September, I sat in the study of my house, fully paid off, with no one's name on the deed but mine, and I looked at the check that had just arrived in the mail. It was from Reggie, the final payment, $750, same as always, but this one had a note attached, paid in full. I stared at it for a long time. Then I went to my filing cabinet, pulled out the ledger I'd been keeping since July 2025, and I wrote in the final entry, total owed, $46,950, total repaid, $46,950, balance, 0.0. I closed the ledger, put it back in the drawer, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Peace. Not because he'd paid me back, not because justice had been served, but because I'd done it. I'd stood up, I'd spoken my truth. I'd refused to be silenced or diminished or dismissed, and I'd won. Not the loud, dramatic, Hollywood kind of winning, but the quiet, powerful, lasting kind. The kind that changes you from the inside out. The kind that helps you look in the mirror and recognize the woman staring back. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Dinner tonight?" My treat. I smiled and texted back, "Sure, but I'm paying. I can afford it now, because I could. Not just financially, though that was true, but emotionally, spiritually, in every way that mattered. I could afford to be generous again. I could afford to trust again, carefully, slowly, but truly. I could afford to be Laverne Johnson, 66 years old, school secretary, author, speaker, survivor, fighter, helper, friend. I could afford to be myself, and that, I realized as I grabbed my purse and headed out the door into the golden September sunlight, was worth more than $46,000 could ever buy.